Okay, this video is from the book Best Christian Art. We're doing chapter 18, just some miscellaneous topics. It's by me, Pete Rogers. Okay, first painting here, I love this painting by Winslow Homer, Lifeline. And so it's the idea of the man saving the woman, and he's doing it kind of anonymously. And, you know, good men, we're kind of programmed to help women, protect them, and do right by them. I actually think this whole women's lib feminism stuff has really been bad for women. You know, when I was growing up, women, they were almost all my friends. Their parents were married. Divorce was rare. They had their own house. The mother stayed home with the kids. She didn't have to work. Only the divorced mom had to work. So nowadays, most women, what I see, they all have to work because the economy's poor. And then all this feminism makes women toxic, so the men don't want anything to do with them. And also, men are so scared of all the divorce that now I see things are very broken apart. And most of the middle-aged women I know, they're kind of miserable because they work and then they come home, no one cares about the house, and they got to clean their house. They're kind of tired, they're kind of exhausted. A lot of them have real small families or hardly any kids or no kids, and they're going to be like lonely when they're older. Because a man, we're a lot more obsessive compulsive about work and hobbies, whereas women are more social. If they don't have people around, they're really lonely. Let's see here. The good old-fashioned Christian ways work, you know. Find somebody you love, stay married your whole life, and raise a big family and be happy. That actually works well. It sounds primitive and old-fashioned, but it works. That's how I grew up, and it was great. Okay, here's a nice painting. It's called Maid Milking a Cow. It's by Gerhard Borch, 1654. What I like about this painting is this is kind of like a patient trapped into taking meds every day for a disease they could easily cure with a low-fat vegan diet. I still like the program I can write on top of a painting. Okay, now here's a nice painting by Norman Rockwell, and it's sort of like the different types of freedom of speech. And you have to have freedom of speech so you could get to the truth. If you don't have freedom of speech, you can't work to the truth. Freedom of worship. Yeah, people should be allowed to worship whatever they want, and including they should be able to talk about religion at school or their jobs. They shouldn't force it on other people, but they should be allowed to talk about it. And then, you know, additional paintings with this series here. Freedom from want. You know, food should be available. There shouldn't be artificial games being played as there are nowadays to minimize the food supply and drive up prices. Freedom from fear. Okay, so here's a good quote by Charles Bradlaugh. He says, "Without free speech, no search for truth is possible. Without free speech, progress is checked, and the nations no longer march forward towards the nobler life. Better 1,000-fold abuse of free speech than the denial of free speech. The abuse dies in a day, but the denial stays the life of the people and it entombs hope." Okay, so the relevance of that is nowadays you'll hear a lot of stuff about, oh, we have to prevent misinformation on the internet. And we can't have any anonymity on the internet. And you know what? It's better to have a bunch of jerk trolls being rude here and there than to not have any free speech on the internet. And it's better to have people saying all kinds of stupid, dishonest stuff, as they already do. Let's say, look at nutrition. There's tons of people promoting high-fat diets and all this other nonsense. And so even while you don't like people lying about stuff on the internet, it's better that they're allowed to speak than that there's some, you know, censorship thing that doesn't allow people to talk, and then you could never get the truth. Because power, you know, a ruler never wants free speech, because free speech is the power of the people. The ruler never wants religion, because religion is the power of the people. The ruler wants centralization, total control, have themselves declared as a god, and no one's able to contradict them ever. That's what they always want in tyranny. So you as a people, you should want a God that says you are created in the image of God, and that you should want free speech. You should want, you know, small businesses that give you a better chance to be able to have a decent life. Okay, a couple more quotes here. Okay, this guy is kind of a clever guy, Harry Brown, from his book, How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. You want to see things truly so that you can deal with them properly. Truth isn't an end in itself. It's always a means to an end. The purpose of knowing the truth is to be able to make it work for you. You need to know the truth in order to deal with things as they are and to get predictable results from them. You may want to know the truth of a particular mechanical cause and effect relationship so you can fix your car. The principle is always the same. You want the truth so you can use it to produce a consequence that you want. Truth is information that leads to predictable results. The test to be applied to any idea is, does it work? Okay, so that's what people need. They need the truth so they can make intelligent decisions. Like the quote from Dr. McDougall. If you got diabetes, you need to know that a high-fat diet causes insulin resistance, and you need to know that a starch diet helps prevent insulin resistance. How can you get better if you don't know that? You don't know what to do unless you know that. Okay, and that's also why controlling information is a common strategy of unfair rulers, because when they've got true information and the public doesn't, that gives them one more advantage over the pros. Okay, Nathaniel Branden, he's kind of a clever psychologist guy. He was friends with Ayn Rand, and here he goes. Anyone who really loves you wants you to be authentic, and anyone who doesn't want you to be authentic doesn't really love you. Creativity requires leisure. Yep, like you've seen that, like in Athens. There has to be some free time for people to have time to write and paint and philosophize. Okay, Branden continues. The first step towards change is awareness. One of the most important moments in healing is when the client grasps that no one is coming. No one is coming to save me. No one is coming to make life right for me. No one is coming to solve my problems. If I don't do something, then nothing is going to get better. And I think that's the same thing too with general health and freedom from the chronic diseases. Once you realize that these medicines don't work for dietary diseases, and the only cure is to fix the diet, and the sooner the better before irreversible damage is done, then you've got a chance. But if you think someone else is going to save you from a dietary disease, good luck. Okay, next quote now is from modern open-mindedness about true intellectual variety of ideas is like Procrustes on bedsides. Okay, silliness. Okay, Robert Louis Stevenson. To know what you prefer, instead of humbly saying amen to whatever the world tells you that you ought to prefer, is to have kept your soul alive. Yeah, like that's Robert Louis Stevenson from the 1800s. They try to tell you that, you have to accept gay marriage, that gay marriage is the same as a mother and a father. It's not. I mean, if two gay men, want to be together, that's fine. That's their own business. But that is not the same as a mother and a father who genetically are programmed to love that kid. It's not the same, okay? To know what you prefer instead of humbly saying, I already just did that quote. I think the reason why that's getting emphasized so much, this lesbian, gay, transgender stuff, is because I think big money wants to use it as a way to make the Christian male, female, heterosexual family illegal. There's good reason why I say that. A civil union, fine, but to say that it's the same thing as a mother and a father who genetically have that kid, that is different. They're going to take away all the tax breaks from them. That's my prediction, unfortunately. And eventually, Christianity is going to be illegal. That's where it's all headed towards. Hopefully that won't happen. Okay, Horace Greeley quote, "It is impossible to enslave mentally or socially a Bible-reading people. The principles of the Bible are the groundwork of human freedom." Yep, and that's why they want to make the Bible illegal and they want to make Christianity illegal. There's already a lot of push for that. Roger Scruton, the English philosopher from the 1900s, early 20s. "The core of common culture is religion. Tribes survive and flourish because they have gods who fuse many wills into a single will and demand and reward the sacrifices on which social life depends. Many people under the influence of science and particularly neuro-nonsense will say that the sacred is an old concept, it's just a hangover, but you can easily see that that's not so, because everyone has a sense of desecration. There are things everybody values, which when they are spoiled, they are not just moved or destroyed, they are desecrated." Yep, well said. Okay, Jack Webb, author of How the Scots-Irish Shaped America. "My culture needs to rediscover itself." Okay, and it was a great book. He covers fascinating historical events like Kings Mountain in the 1700s and the great Scots-Irishmen like Davy Crockett, Sam Houston, George Patton, John Wayne, and lots of others. I think Dr. John McDougall's Scots-Irish, if I'm not mistaken. I'm regular Irish in my father's side of the family. Okay, in the modern world, we're seeing a lot of censorship, which should remind people of the 1930s. Not good. Okay, now here's a quote from Heinrich Heine. He says, wherever they burn books, they will also, in the end, burn human beings. There's good reason to believe that. Great art is a sign of individualism and freedom. For every painting listed in this book, there's at least 10 that are almost as good and hundreds that are good. If we go back in time 3,000 years and study what history tells us, that the most common way to conquer any society follows a 3-step standard approach. Get rid of the men, plunder the towns, then sell the women and the children into slavery. And it certainly looks like it's going in that direction. Here's a quote from the Bible, Matthew chapter 12, verses 25 to 27. If a kingdom is divided against itself, it cannot stand. If a house is divided against itself, it cannot stand. No one can enter a strong man's house to steal his possessions unless he first ties up the strong man. Then he can plunder his house. Okay, so that's what all this toxic masculinity stuff is about. They want to keep on pushing and feminizing society because there's no gynocracy that can defend itself. So they want to turn USA as much as they can into a gynocracy so that when they finally say, okay, you stupid chumps, now it's time for slavery, there'll be no one will be able to, deny that. So hopefully America will not go into becoming a slave place, even though it's really being pushed in that direction right now. Here's Charles Heston, the greatest American actor of all time. He said, telling us what to think has evolved into telling us what to say, so telling us what to do can't be far behind. He was in so many great movies and in so many great things. And here's a guy by the name of Philip Dick. He wrote a lot of great books that were made into movies. He said, the basic tool for manipulation of reality is the manipulation of words. If you can control the meaning of words, you can control the people who must use the words. Yeah, for example, the word, to take pride in what you do, that word is kind of like now being co-opted in other ways, in a lot of words. Okay. All right. When someone tells you that you are only allowed to use the words that they choose for you, they're degrading you. They are saying that they are above you and that they have the right to control how you think, how you behave, how you talk. Okay, here's a quote by Camille Paglia. She said, the venerable emeritus professor still at Yale when I entered graduate school in the 1960s may have been reserved, puritanical wasps, but they were men of honor who had given their lives to scholarship. Today in elite schools, honor and ethics are gone. The number one problem in academia today is not ignorant students, but ignorant professors. And I saw some of that happening. When I was at Stanford, it was still pretty good back in the 1980s. But it's gone downhill. They got rid of their Western Civilization course, Western Civ. The whole first year, the entire year, there was a lot of, like a big 5-unit class on Western Civ. And that was a good class to take. You get exposed to all that stuff. The Iliad, the Odyssey, the Aeneid, Boethius, Consolation of Philosophies, Machiavelli, all that sort of standard stuff. When a person does not know history, it becomes much easier to trick them into believing all kinds of silliness. Modern college-age kids often turn their backs on the values of their parents. 10 years later, they will realize that their parents love them and want the best for them. They will also realize that the college overcharged them for tuition and didn't teach them much. Yeah, they require kids to take classes that basically say, refute all the values of their parents. Okay, Charles Murray from his book, Human Accomplishment. I come to the end of this book convinced that religion is indispensable for igniting great accomplishments in the arts. Great art requires a source of inspiration. When humans are performing at the height of the human capacity, it seems wise to think they are doing something correct. Johann Sebastian Bach does not need to explain himself. He made a prima facie case that his way of looking at the universe needs to be taken seriously. It behooves us to do so. Yeah, I had that same experience too. I studied all these great geniuses, and what you see over and over is that they were inspired by God, by religion. Look at Michelangelo, the greatest artist who ever lived. Look at Johann Sebastian Bach, the greatest composer who ever lived. Okay, look at Isaac Newton, the greatest scientist who ever lived. That's over and over the case. Okay, and that's it for this chapter. Hope that was interesting.